And as far as everything can be that I've heard, their goal is to play him full-time offense, defense as much as they can and see how it goes. If he can't handle it, then they'll back off some. Welcome to Just the Stats NFL, the show that covers the NFL statistical leaders from the all-time greats to the current players leading the NFL. I'm Ernie Jennings, your host. So today we are going to take a look into the past and compare that. Not really so much comparing, but just talking about Travis Hunter a little bit because there's nothing to compare at the moment. He's about to embark on a career as a full-time defensive and offensive player. And so I thought a little look back at some of the players in the past who did the same type of thing. There really, as much as you talk about it, there might have been some, but there's not that many that were super at it. But we'll mention a couple. So got the idea basically because I was watching the Jaguars, and finally in that first preseason game, we saw Travis Hunter play, and I thought, "Hey, why not look at this?" And I know other people have done the same thing, but I thought I'd take a shot at it myself. Um, that preseason game wasn't the greatest for the Jaguars on defense, but if you're big into field goals, we probably have one of the best field goal kickers because Cam Little at the end of the first half kicked a 70-yard field goal. So that was pretty amazing. 70 yards, and he cleared that upright by a couple yards. So it wasn't like it bounced over the rail, over the bar. He really nailed it. So that's something to look forward to. Rather have touchdowns, but it's nice to know you have a good field goal kicker. Um, but other than that, Travis Hunter in that particular game had a few catches, but not many yards. They were all short, little dump offs type of thing. And on defense, he did all right, missed a tackle. But other than that, it's first game. We'll see how it goes. Uh, Now they didn't play him both sides at the same time. He played offense, and then once the offense was done, he came out and played defense for a little bit, and that kind of wrapped it up for him. But we'll talk about him in a little bit. So, as I said, this episode is going to cover Travis Hunter and some of the players from the past. All right, let's start with that. Let's get this episode of Just the Stats NFL going. The first one I'm going to look at is Chuck Bednarik. He played for the Philadelphia Eagles from 1949 to 1962. Kind of shows you what we're looking at here when you're talking about real-time players that played both sides of the ball. So he played, like I said, 49 to 62, 14 years. On offense, he played 7 of those years on offense playing center and 3 years as a dual player. So his entire career was not as a dual player, but he did play 3 years playing both sides. One side as center, the other side as linebacker. So this is very different than Travis Hunter, who's primarily, well, not primarily. He's a wide receiver on offense, and he's playing a cornerback on defense. So nothing the same as Chuck did playing on the line, both sides of the line. So quite a bit of tussle. You know how the lines are. There's a lot of infighting going on down there. So that's kind of tough. Uh, but he played 14 years. In those 14 years, he was 6 times All Pro first team, 3 times All Pro second team, 8 Pro Bowls in his 14 years, and he was in the Hall of Fame 1967, which means he was elected into the Hall of Fame the first year that he was eligible. So he was quite a player. So that was our first player. Next one, very distinguished career, and that's Sammy Baugh, Slinging Sammy Baugh. He, played little overlap with Chuck, not too much, but a few years. He played from 1937 to 1952. He played 16 years. Now, he was a little bit different in the sense that he played quarterback. Uh, Played quarterback, he was a punter, and he played defense. So he was all around everywhere on for the team. He had quite a career. Now, in his career as quarterback, he led the NFL in completions 5 times, completion percentage 8 times, most yards thrown in a season 4 times, TDs twice. Now, he did lead in throwing interceptions 3 times, but back then you threw a lot more interceptions than players do today. He led the NFL in quarterback rating 3 times. He was all pro first team 4 times, all pro second team 3 times. He made the Pro Bowl 6 times. And then as a punter, he led the NFL in yards per punt 5 times, made the Pro Bowl as a punter 3 times, and second team 1 time. He had a career average as a punter of 45.1 yards, which now we're talking about a player who retired in 1952. His record wasn't broken until until 2014. It took 62 years before a punter broke his career average of 45.1. Now I know I'm dating myself, but I remember as a fan of the Raiders, they had Ray Guy and they always talked about him. But even as great as he was, 45.1 yards was not a total he ever reached on a career level. That's a career level. So pretty amazing. He had 1 year over 50 yards of punt. So pretty good. So there's his quarterback punter. On defense, he led the NFL in 1943 with 11 interceptions in a single season. He had 31 in his career. He forced 47 fumbles, and in 1947, he had led the NFL in 15 caused fumbles in a single season. So quite a player. Now, he was elected to the Hall of Fame as well in 1963. So he really was somebody that played full time both sides of the ball. Obviously, much more as quarterback, and he was punter, always punted. So very good. The last one we want to look at, not the last one, but the last one from that far back, I should say, played right along the same time period as Sling and Sammy Baugh, and that was Don Hutson for the Green Bay Packers. He was an incredible player as well. He played from 1935 to 1945 for 11 years. So this is something that's very interesting. Um, he played a left end, which is kind of like a tight end because he lined up next to the tackle. So now think of this: 11 years. He led the NFL in receptions for 8 years, 8 out of his 11 years. He led the NFL in receiving yards 7 years, which is 7 out of his 11 years. He led the NFL twice in yards per reception. And he led the NFL in touchdowns receptions 9 times. 9 out of his 11 years, he was leading the league. It's incredible. He held the record for most touchdowns ever for a while, but he did not break 100. He had 99 receiving TDs. And if you look at the record, there's 12 players that have 100. So there's only 12 players that ever had 100 or more. He was right on the line there at 99. He was all pro first team 8 years, 8 times out of his 11, and second team all pro 3 times. So every year he was an all pro. 8 of those out of his 11 is first team. So really impressive. Now on defense, it was a little different. Very good. He played defensive end the first 5 years, but he was not that big of a guy, so they shifted him over to secondary the second half of his career. So first 5 years he was defensive end. The last 6 years he was in the secondary. And he led the NFL 1 time in interceptions. He was all pro 6 times on defense. So pretty good player. Also, for 6 of those years, he kicked the team's extra points. So mostly that's what he kicked. He kicked few field a few field goals, but not that many. Not that there was that many kicked at that time anyway, but, as far as extra points, he led the NFL twice in most extra points kicked. So, again, another player, all-around great player. First team, I mean, he Super Bowl, I mean, I should say Hall of Famer as well. Um, Incredible player. Now, I'll list a couple more recent players. One of them's Deion Sanders. He's often mentioned, as a player who played both sides of the ball, which is interesting because obviously Travis Hunter played for Deion Sanders in college at Colorado. So that's very interesting to see that you have Deion Sanders so full well knew what he had with Travis Hunter, knew how to use Travis Hunter to the best of his ability. Now, the only thing with Deion Sanders when they make this claim is it's not a real. He was definitely more of a defensive player. I'll put it that way. There was one year when he had 36 receptions on 67 targets. 36 was the most. After that, prior to that, and after that, in fact, he never had more than 7. So he was very sporadic as an offensive player the rest of his career. In fact, he had several years where he had 1 or 0 catches, even though he might have been out on the field as a more of a diversion than anything else. But so yeah, he did play both ways, but not quite the same way as a full-time player would. This was a little bit more situational. The last one to look at is Troy Brown for the New England Patriots. Played for them from 1993 to 2007, so 15 years. The majority of it was on offense. In fact, almost all of it but 1 year, really. There was 1 year he played on defense as a defensive back, and that was in 2004. He didn't start, but he did play. Um, that 1 year, he had 3 interceptions. He caused 1 fumble. He had 14 tackles. That was basically not a bad player, but he was more of a fill-in. They needed him to play there. His time on as a wide receiver was dwindling. He wasn't really the starter on offense anymore as a wide receiver, so they shifted him over, and he really was a benefit to the team for that 1 year. In his whole career, he only had 1 year out of 15 where he had 100 receptions as a wide receiver, and at that, he only had 101. He had in the same year, he had 1,000 yards, which was just under 1,200 yards. He made the Pro Bowl that year, just that 1 year. So he was, he was a good player, but he wasn't really a full-time two-way player, and when he was playing defense, he really wasn't playing offense. Um, they just shifted him over completely. He also, though, did was a punt returner, kinda like Deion Sanders as well. Deion Sanders, by the way, is one of the greatest punt returners probably. Um, but he did do punt returns. He led the NFL twice in, uh well, he led the NFL once in, punt returns for TDs. He had 2 in a single season, so that was pretty good. And he also led the NFL one time in, return yards, uh, per return, and he had a 14.2 rate. So he was pretty much a full-time punt returner as well. So those really, when you look through these players, there's not that many, even when you talk about players in the past. And there were some in the past that played as well, but they weren't great players, like Chuck Bednarik or Sammy Baugh or Don Hutson. I mean, you just had to back then. Pay wasn't that great. You didn't have that many players to start with, so you ended up having to have players play all over the place. So a little bit different than today. Today you have, you need 22 players, but when you go into a game, you got 45. So you got plenty of players to cover all your positions. So you don't need anybody normally playing multiple spots. So that's it. So let's look at Travis Hunter and what's to be expected from him. Well, he's been playing this way his entire career. The last 2 years at Colorado, and even prior to that, when he was at the other colleges, but when he came under the tutelage of, Deion Sanders at Colorado Buffaloes, he was a full-time receiver and a full-time cornerback. He played all the time. I mean, he played well over 80% of the snaps on both sides of the ball. But in 2024, he had 96 receptions for 1,258 yards and 15 touchdowns. It was incredible. And then on defense, he was just also very good. I mean, he was a Heisman Trophy winner. So he was an amazing player. His last year there, he had he had 7 interceptions his 2 years at Colorado. Excuse me, 3 years, 1 time, 3 interceptions one season and 4 the other one. But he was just great on coverage too. So he was definitely a full-time player on both sides, and he won the Heisman Trophy, as I said. So now the Jacksonville Jaguars trade up from pick 5 to pick 2 and pick him up. And if you listen to the podcast, no one seems to know what to do with Travis Hunter. How much is he going to play on offense, defense? Most people think, and I just heard this today, I was listening to a podcast, going to play more offense, probably full-time offense, and then he'll fill in on certain downs and certain situations on defense. But it's not really how it's working. If you listen to the local podcasts, local commentators and so forth, which I do, he's been out there. He plays offense, defense in practice. He started out just doing offense one day, defense the other day. But then they've gotten him down where because they know in during the season when they're practicing, he'll be practicing on both sides of the ball every day. Now the way they're working that is when he's on offense, he does what he can. If there's special teams type situations and so forth, he's on the sidelines working with the defensive coaches about the plays that he needs to learn for defense and vice versa. So he's always being kept on top of those things. He stays over. The coaches have an agreement to go ahead and work with him before, after. He's always practicing. He's always learning. He's always being prepared. In fact, one defensive player talked about, could he do that? Could he play offense and then come on defense when he hadn't been playing the defense, so he didn't know what was happening, what the plays were, or at least that was the theory. He comes in off switching over from offense to defense, steps right in, plays called by the offense, and he's in the right position for the defensive play, which is astounding. That just shows his dedication. And he talks about it. It's a challenge for him. If you listen to him talk, it's a challenge. Um, every time they question him, he says, he just keeps saying it. I do it all the time. And he is a dynamo. He does not tire. They show him out there. He's running around. He's interacting with players all the time. The team loves him, and everybody's excited to see how this is going to work. It's new to a lot of other players too. Even Trevor Lawrence was talking about it. It's just something to see and see how it's going to work. But you don't trade up from 5 to 2 to pick a player to, even if he is the best wide receiver. That's and a spot player. You went up in the draft because you want to use him like he's being used in college. And as far as everything can be that I've heard, their goal is to play him full-time offense, defense as much as they can and see how it goes. If he can't handle it, then they'll back off some. But initially, they're going to give it a shot. If he can do it, they'll do it. One of the big differences between college and the pros, I mean, negatively for him, obviously players are bigger, faster, that kind of a thing. But on the other hand, positively for him, there's more timeouts, longer breaks, that type of thing, than there is in college. So he'll actually have a little bit more time to rest than he might in college. So it gives him a chance to recoup. Not that he necessarily needs it. He's amazing when you hear the other players talk about him and the coaches talk about him, how he can play. So I fully expect to see him out there pretty much full time on both sides of the ball. but we'll see. Interestingly, right now, he's about the fourth favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year and about the third favorite or so to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. So we'll see if he can win both of those. That'd be an amazing feat, obviously. Um, but I'm hoping next year when we look at again at the Jaguars and talk about these rookies around the entire league to hear that Travis Hunter was able to do it. And we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. All right, that was a quick run through of Travis Hunter and some of these past players. So stick around. My next podcast, I'll be looking again at the NFC South and at the Carolina Panthers. See how they're looking in 2024, how they looked, who was their great players, and then we'll look at 2025, their outlook for their team, and who their best fantasy players might be. So if you want to hear some of my earlier podcasts about the NFL teams or other topics that I've covered lately, you can always go to YouTube, check them out there. I've been videoing recently, so they're video as well as audio only. Just go to Just the Stats NFL. If you want to contact me, again, justthestatsnfl@gmail.com. You can leave a message if you have a question, whatever. I'm also, of course, on any podcast sites that you can think of. Also, Facebook, X, Instagram, all at Just the Stats NFL. All right. Well, I appreciate you listening. I thank you for listening. And that is a wrap for this episode of Just the Stats NFL. So until next time, I am out.